Good morning, Rabbi Isai. I believe we have arrived at Siman Chavches Seif Beis. So we're picking up from there. The Shulchan Aruch says, Chayev levorich koidem sheichaseh. One is obligated to make a bracha before covering the blood. And the bracha is, Asher kedashonu b'mitzvoso v'tzivonu. Hashem sanctified us with his mitzvahs and commanded us, al Kisuy dam ba'ofa, about covering the blood with earth. The Shulchan Aruch stresses that this bracha should be made before covering the blood. This is in line with the usual principle with all kiyum mitzvahs, that whenever one makes a bracha, the bracha is normally made before the mitzvah. The Shulchan Aruch stresses this because there is an opinion in the Rishonim, the Shitta of the Bahag, who maintains that this case is an exception to the general rule, because he looks at shchita and kisuy, the shchita of the animal and the kisuy, the covering of the blood, as one long procedure, as though it was one mitzvah. And therefore he says that having shechted at the beginning, you're somehow in the middle of the mitzvah. You're not before the mitzvah, you're in the middle. And to interrupt in the middle isn't proper. And therefore he says that this case is an exception to the general rule, and the bracha should be made after the Kisuy HaDam. However, we don't rule like his opinion. The majority of Rishonim don't accept this view, and therefore the Shulchan Aruch stresses the bracha should be made before covering the blood. In fact, it's to the extent that even if somebody forgot to make the bracha before covering the blood, and now after covering it he says to himself, oh my, I didn't make the bracha. So should we maybe tell him, at least make the bracha now, because there is the opinion of the Bahag who says that the bracha is meant to be made then? No, we don't. We reject the opinion of the Bahag to the extent that we say after covering the blood, this is a sort of suffix brachas. It's a suffix if you can make the bracha, then altogether suffix brachas lahakel. The poskim question the wording of the bracha over here, al Kisuy dam be'ofer, covering the blood with ofer, where the word offer over here is that it seems a little bit of an extra sort of detail in the mitzvah. When we make the bracha, we don't usually go into the details of the mitzvah, what exactly you should cover it with. If we say al tvilas kelim, we don't say al tvilas kelim b'mayim, we just say al tvilas kelim. Why over here should the word ba'ofar be included as part of the bracha? And they give a variety of reasons. The Taz mentions the fact that from this word ba'ofar, we learn that there are two angles of the mitzvah, which we're going to see later on in the Siman. There's a mitzvah that there should be offer both underneath and on top of the blood. It has to be covered from all sides. And in fact, there are slight differences maybe even between the halacha of the earth underneath and the earth on top. There's sort of two angles of the mitzvah. So to allude to these two parts of the mitzvah, we use the term ba'ofar, which is the wording of the posuk where Chazal learn from here this idea that it needs to be covered with offer. Aruch HaShulchan suggests that very often we find the word Kisuy in the Torah for a more external type of covering, a covering that doesn't completely absorb and take in within it the thing it's covering, like Tamar covered her face with a scarf, so it's just a sort of external type of covering. So to express the nature of the covering, we add the word ba'ofar. Be that as it may, there are some poskim who say that there's no need to say the word ba'ofar, and there are two minhagim. The Kaf HaChaim says that everybody can just follow their minhag. Either way, it's certainly not ma'akev, this word ba'ofar. If you said it, you said it. If you didn't, you didn't. Says the Rambam, Mishe shochat pama rishoin, somebody who's shechting for the first time ever in his life. So he's a new shochet, new on the job, and this is the first time that he's shechting something. Mevarich shechiyonu, he says the bracha of shechiyonu al hakisui, when he does the Kisuy HaDam. So before doing the Kisuy HaDam, he would say two brachas, al Kisuy HaDam ba'ofar, and also shechiyonu. Avol loy al hashchita, but not on the shchita, even though it's his first time doing shchita as well. The whole procedure is new. It's the first time doing shchita and the first time doing kisui. But no shechiyonu on the shechita, only shechiyonu on covering the blood. Why? The mazik leberia. Because when one does the shchita, you are ultimately causing some damage to one of Hashem's creatures. And therefore to say that shechiyonu would be a little bit insensitive. So no shechiyonu over there. Poskim question this ruling of the Ramah at great length, that somebody who performs a mitzvah for the first time says Shechianu. Indeed, this concept, were it to be accepted as halacha, would be relevant in many scenarios. Not only over here. Somebody who puts on tzitzis for the first time, somebody who puts on tefillin for the first time. If you would follow this ruling of the Ramah, that's what should come out. And the Shach brings a lot of proofs that it isn't so. There's other places in halacha where we see that you don't make a bracha, you don't say Shechianu on such a thing, and he leaves the ruling of the Ramah as a tzorich iyun. And therefore, the Pri Megadim says this should be looked at as a case of sofik brachos, a doubt whether a bracha is required or not. And we know the rule is, whenever you're in doubt whether a bracha should be recited or shouldn't be recited, sofik brachos lahakel, no bracha is recited. So, the bottom line is that no Shechianu is said. However, we could guess ourselves, poskim recommend that somebody who finds himself in this situation, there's a good way of avoiding the question by getting yourself a beged chodosh, a pri chodosh, new item of clothing, new fruit, where you can anyway say the Shechianu, so you can say the Shechianu having in mind the new fruit, or the new item of clothing, and then you've avoided the question. Reb Shlomo Zalman, when his boys became bar mitzvah, he would say to them that when they put on the tefillin for, let's say, a month or however long they would put it on before their bar mitzvah, he would clearly stipulate that he's not giving them the tefillin as a present at this point in time. They doesn't belong to their child, they remain belonging to him. He's lending them the tefillin. When it would come the day of their bar mitzvah, he would give them the tefillin as a present. He'd say, today I'm giving you the tefillin as a present. And he maintained that with that we avoid the question of whether Shechianu is to be made or not, because when you've been given such a valuable item like tefillin, aside from the essential lomdisha question of whether a bracha can be made on fulfilling a mitzvah for the first time, you've been given a valuable item which is worth a lot of money and very useful to you, so that itself warrants a Shechianu. So that you have simcha in using it, so that itself warrants a Shechianu, and one can avoid the issue of whether Shechianu should be made on a first time mitzvah or not by doing so. Moving on to Seif Gimel. We learned in Seif Aleph that Kisuy HaDam is performed only when we shecht either a bird, an oif, or a chayil, non-domesticated animals. When shechting a domesticated animal, however, Kisuy HaDam is not required. So now we have some types of animals where there is some form of doubt. So firstly, koi. There's a creature which Chazal call a koi, shuhu sofik chayil. Chazal were unsure whether this creature should be classified as a behema, a domesticated animal, or a chayil, a non-domesticated animal. And likewise, there's another case of doubt, kil'ayim, a hybrid, habam, a behema of a chayil, which is born from parents, a mother and father, where one party is a behema and the other party is a chayil. Tzorich l'chasei stomon. So both of these situations are dealt with as a situation of doubt. We're unsure whether to classify this creature in front of us as a behema or as a chayil, and therefore the Shulchan Aruch rules, tzorich l'chasei stomon, one is obligated to cover their blood, but ve'eino mevorich, one does so without making a bracha. Because since we don't know whether they're a behema or a chayil, we're unsure whether Kisuy HaDam is required. And therefore, on the one hand, sofik d'oraisa l'chumra, we're unsure whether it's needed, so you have to do it. Sofik d'oraisa l'chumra, it's a sofik and a d'oraisa, so you go l'chumra and you do it. But on the other hand, you don't make any bracha because it's a sofik, whether this is required, and therefore sofik brachas. Once again, Shulchan Aruch is stressing this to the exclusion of other opinions in Rishonim who held that when we have the rule of sofik d'oraisa l'chumra, which tells us that this act which you're doing now is required, you have to do it because sofik d'oraisa l'chumra, they held that once you're obligated to do it because of the rule of sofik d'oraisa l'chumra, we look at it as an act which is absolutely required, and even a bracha may be made. We don't rule like that view, and therefore any case where you have a sofik, whether the mitzvah is required or not, on the one hand you must do it with sofik because sofik d'oraisa l'chumra, on the other hand no bracha is made. When Shulchan Aruch talks here about this case of the koi, which is a sofik chayil, there's a little question over here we're going to learn in Mitzvah Hashem when we arrive far down the road in Yoreh, I think it's Simon Pei, that there are various there are various identifying signs which tell us whether an animal is a behemoth or a chaya, to do with various details of how their horns are formed, what the inside of the horns is like. Tosfos in Chulin explains that Chazal were unable to identify this koi by looking at its horns because it wasn't possible for some reason to dissect them in the proper way that we should be able to see what's going on there, and therefore it wasn't possible to identify it by means of looking at its horns. The next case of the hybrid, which comes from a behemoth and from a chaya, Mepharshim explained that the source of the suffix, why exactly is this a suffix? It has one party which is a chaya and one party which is a behemoth. Mepharshim say that actually we have to look a little more closely what the case is. If the mother of this animal, of this creature, was a chaya, then this animal in front of us most certainly needs Kisuy HaDam. In other words, the maternal line certainly is enough to give the animal the status of a chaya, or at least partial status of a chaya, which is good enough to require Kisuy HaDam. So if its mother is a chaya, it certainly needs Kisuy HaDam. That is not the case being discussed over here. It needs Kisuy HaDam with certainty, and a bracha may be made. The case being discussed over here is the opposite case, where the father of this animal was a chaya, its mother was a behemoth, and there is a suffix in the Gemara whether in these inyanim the father's status is taken into account and he gives his status to the child or not. Do we take this into account or not? And this question is left unresolved, and that's why it's a suffix. So the case is specifically where the father is a chaya, not the other way around. Let's continue Shulchan Aruch, we'll proceed. These cases of a koi and of the hybrid, one may not be shechted on Yom Tov. If one has such a creature, although in essence shchita is permitted on Yom Tov for the sake of eating, it's one of the malachas of oichal nefesh which may be done on Yom Tov, these cannot be shechted on Yom Tov. Why? Because Kisuy HaDam generally involves some form of Yom Tov prohibition. At very least, even if everything else is prepared, at very least it would generally involve mukta, because the earth is normally mukta, and therefore one doesn't check them on Yom Tov. But even a little bit further, even if we were to have earth which was not mukta, so we would have some way of covering this blood without any Yom Tov violation. Let's say we've set aside earth from before Yom Tov, so especially prepared earth, and we've set it on the side, so it's not mukta. We still don't want you to arrive at a situation of having to do Kisuy HaDam on this animal on Yom Tov. Chazal completely forbade doing the Kisuy HaDam, and the reason is because Chazal were concerned that if people will see you doing Kisuy HaDam on this creature on Yom Tov, people will say to themselves, "Ooh, Chazal would never have allowed doing Kisuy HaDam on Yom Tov, which is definitely a tocha and involves extra exertion on Yom Tov. Chazal would not have allowed such a thing were they not to be absolutely certain that this Kisuy is required." As they will think that Chazal wouldn't have allowed such a thing if it was only a matter of doubt. It's absolutely required. So people will see you covering the blood and they'll think, Kisuy HaDam over here is absolutely required. And what's such a great problem if people will think that? If people will think that, they'll think that this creature is certainly a chaya. And we know that a chaya has got a certain leniency which a behemoth doesn't have. A chaya, the various forbidden fats that are forbidden in a behemoth are permitted in a chaya. So Chazal are concerned if others will witness you covering the blood of this creature on Yom Tov, they'll take from that it is certainly a chaya, and in future occasions maybe they'll allow its fats. So therefore Chazal said they absolutely banned any Kisuy HaDam on these types of creatures on Yom Tov, and because of that, even if you have offer prepared, still no Kisuy HaDam, and therefore don't even shecht them in the first place, because we don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're going to shecht it and you won't be able to cover its blood. If everyone did go ahead and shecht them, then one does not cover their blood on Yom Tov. When it comes nightfall, if the blood is still somewhat visible, recognizable, it hasn't completely been swallowed up, then there is still a mitzvah. We're going to learn about this a little later on, how long the mitzvah lasts. As long as there's still some noticeable remainder of the blood there, there's still a mitzvah, and then you'll do it at nighttime, you should cover it. One should not, however, prepare a utensil before shechting the animal to catch the blood in. Sounds like a good eitzah, right? Let's prepare a utensil to catch the blood in. That way it won't dry up so quickly. And you'll keep it in that utensil until after Yom Tov, and then you'll cover it. No, that should not be done, because we learnt in Siman Yud Aleph that there is a prohibition on shechting and catching the blood in kelim. Then there shouldn't be any concern, some impression of shechting for the sake of Avodah Zarah. That was the derech of the idol worshippers. Okay, Sif Dalet. Ha-buffalo. So there's a creature called a buffalo. Nagu shaloi lechasos es dome. The custom is that we do not cover its blood. There's some discussion in Poskim whether this creature should be classified as a behemoth or as a chaya. Shulchan Aruch rules that it can be classified as a behemoth with confidence. There's not even a suffix. Therefore, one's not obligated to cover its blood. Some of Farshim say that this opinion understands. We'll find a creature often. A number of times in Novi we find a creature called Marie, Mem Reish Yud Aleph, Marie. So when David HaMelech brought the Oren back to the Mishkan, so they had this procession and they shechted Tzonu Bokor Marie Loroiv. Some of the Mefarshim identify this Marie as buffalo, and since if the Marie is the buffalo, then it's absolutely clear that it's a behemoth because they brought it there as a korban. Chayes are not brought as a korban. But says the Ramah, v'yesh mistapkim, some are unsure how this should be classified. But buffalo, shuhu shor habar. They say that this buffalo is the shor habar which is mentioned in Chazal. Chazal talk about a creature called a wild shor, and Chazal on themselves, there's two opinions in Chazal, whether the shor habar, this wild shor, is simply basically just a wild shor, and so it's a behemoth and it's got a bit wild. Or is it actually some other min all on its own? It's machlokes in Chazal, and they suffix how to paskin, and therefore we have to look at it shema chayahu. Perhaps it's a chayah al-kain, and therefore what should be the practical ruling according to the Ramah? Tov lechasoisoi v'loi bracha. It is good to cover it without saying any bracha. Or says the Ramah, or alternatively, an eitzah for this case, and indeed for all cases where there's a suffix of Kisuy HaDam, lishchot oif gamkein. Along with shechting this creature, find yourself some chicken, shech the chicken as well. And then you'll be able to make a bracha on Kisuy HaDam after having shechted both of these creatures. You'll make a bracha on the Kisuy HaDam and you'll go ahead and you'll cover the blood of both of them. Poskim stress that somebody who follows this advice should make a point of shechting the oif not directly over the blood of the buffalo, because if you will, then the blood of the oif will become bottled in the blood of the buffalo, and your bracha will once again be called into question. So one should make a point of shechting it next to the blood of the buffalo, so that you can make a bracha on that blood and then cover both of them in one go. And likewise, one should make a point of covering the blood of the bird first, because the bracha primarily goes on that. And afterwards you'll cover the blood of the buffalo. So if when one does Kisuy HaDam, one has to be sure that underneath there is soft earth. Soft earth is earth that's not a clod of earth, it's earth that's granules, it's grainy. You could sort of move it as a powder between your fingers. There has to be soft earth underneath, because we're going to learn that Kisuy HaDam has to be done specifically in this soft type of earth, and Kisuy HaDam needs to be done from both sides, both from underneath and from on top, so there has to be this type of earth underneath. Now, we're going to learn that the Kisuy HaDam needs to be done by an act. There has to be an act of Kisuy HaDam. For example, if Offer suddenly falls on top of your dam, the mitzvah of Kisuy HaDam has not been fulfilled. We'll see about it later on. So now we're going to look at how exactly does this requirement apply to the offer that's underneath the dam. That offer was presumably, it was there before. What happens if you just happen to find a place in the ground which has got this offer, tichuach? You didn't need to do anything. There was no act. So the Shulchan Aruch brings two opinions. The first opinion says, "V'tzarich lahazminoi b'peh." One should, at the very least, dedicate the earth underneath verbally. So, although it's not going to be exactly like the earth on top, which actually needs a physical act, but one should do some semblance of an act of Kisuy HaDam, by at very least dedicating the earth verbally and saying this earth should be Ofor Zeh Yehei L'Tzorech Kisuy HaDam. Certainly, however, even this opinion who says that this is what needs to be done, he is discussing specifically a situation where the offer was already there before and it didn't need any act of yours to arrange it in that place. If you brought the earth to that place, physically, for the sake of Kisuy HaDam, then there's no question that no verbal dedication needs to be done. However, some say that this is not required. In their view, the offer underneath is different than the offer on top. The offer underneath simply something that has to just be there. It doesn't require an actual act, unlike the offer on top, which does require an act. Since Shulchan Aruch doesn't give an absolute ruling, and he only brings the second opinion as a yesh omrim, and the first opinion he brings without using the words yesh omrim, it sounds like his inclination is to the first opinion, and indeed, poskim say it is a sofik d'oraisa, and one should be machmir to fulfill the view of the first opinion. Sifav, mechase b'yodeh, when doing the Kisuy HaDam, one covers the dam either with one's hand, or b'sakin, or using a knife, or b'kli acher, or using some other utensil. The main point over here being, aval lo b'ragleh, one should not simply cover it with one's foot, kadesh lo yiyu mitzvahs b'zuyas olav, so the mitzvahs should not be degraded and treated with a certain level of disrespect. To cover it with your foot would be disrespectful. One should take either with one's hand or with some utensil and cover it, but not with one's foot. When Shulchan Aruch says over here, so one covers it with the knife, obviously the knife that you have handy at that particular moment is your shechita knife, which you've just used. But, say the poskim, certainly one may not use the blade of the shechita knife to cover the blood, because the shechita knife is something we have to be very careful with and not use for any other usage, for fear that it might get a pagam, it might get a nick, and one might mistakenly use it afterwards for shechita without properly checking it. The poskim say that for sure, even if we do mean the shechita knife over here, we only mean reversing the knife and using its handle to cover the blood, but certainly not using the blade. In fact, poskim are so stringent about this that they say a shochet who does use the blade of the knife for doing Kisuy HaDam should be removed from his post. If somebody did shecht and there was no offer lamata, there was no offer whatsoever underneath, no one shechted on this type of floor, which is not kosher for Kisuy HaDam. Tzorich ligra hadam, one would have to actually scrape away the dam, v'litnoi ba'ofar tichuach, and place it within soft earth, v'lechasis ofar tichuach olav, and to cover it with soft earth on top. Nevertheless, if it would be some sort of situation where it would be impossible to do this, for some reason or other you cannot manage to scrape away the dam, one shouldn't think that there's no mitzvah whatsoever in just covering it on top, since you're not able to fulfill the mitzvah absolutely properly. No. But can say that if it's not going to be possible for whatever reason, one should at very least cover it on top so that one fulfills the mitzvah at least in some measure. Siv Misha Shalchat, the person who actually does the shechita, hu yechase, it is his mitzvah to do the Kisuy HaDam. Ve'im lo kiso, but if he does not do it, v'ra'ahu acher, and somebody else sees that it has not been done, chayav lechasis. So that individual who sees that the Kisuy hasn't yet been done, he is obligated to do the Kisuy. But in essence, the mitzvah belongs to the shochet, it is his right. It does not mean that nobody else is able to do the mitzvah. If the shochet wishes, he's able to give somebody else the kavod, the honor of doing the mitzvah. He can make somebody else a shliach. But this should be done in a way of kavod, in a way of respect, not in a way of like, I'm not interested in this mitzvah, you do it. It should be in a way of honoring somebody else with the mitzvah. He's able to do that. But in essence, if he wishes to do it, it is his mitzvah, and it should not be taken away from him, to the extent that the Gemara says that somebody who jumps in and does the Kisuy HaDam and takes it away from the shochet, he is obligated to pay him the money which one needs to pay for taking a mitzvah away from somebody, which is the amount of money of 10 zehuvim. Nowadays, we're not able to obligate somebody to pay this charge, because the rule is that nowadays our dayanim, our botei din, only have the koyach to obligate people to pay money in situations where they have actually caused somebody clear monetary loss, not things which are what we call a knas. This is a type of knas. So I cannot force the guilty party to pay the Yud Zuhuvim, but on the other hand, were the Shochet to actually put his hand in the guilty party's pocket and take the Yud Zuhuvim out, we would not be able to force the Shochet to return the Yud Zuhuvim. Either way, what this does show us is that the mitzvah belongs to the Shochet, and if somebody takes it away from him, he has wronged the Shochet. And even if nowadays we're not going to force him to pay those 10 Zuhuvim, but at the very least, he should ask the Shochet Mechila and be Mefayis him. Okay, so we'll stop here. I wish everybody a good day. Shkayach.